Is an introduction really necessary for someone we all know so well?
So, yeah, I'm going to say this, and it's going to be a bit controversial. I think that a lot of women don't actually hate being baby mothers or mothers in general. I think they actually just hate the fact that they have lack of support, and the men in general, most of them won't do their part. If they had support, the funds, as well as the men being fathers, I actually think not a single woman would actually ever complain about being a mother in general. But because majority of the situation is the opposite, that's why you see so many of those things back to back to back. And I also will add this too. I think also there's a small window of accountability that doesn't exist on both ends of the spectrum for like different reasons. Um, People won't admit that men always have to work, but even though most men have to work, most of the men don't make a crazy level of money, which is why I think some of the women on there are dealing with men who I personally believe are low income earners, meaning they're probably making 50 or less a year. They have to be. Because I've seen women show me their child support payments, and I was shocked when I found out some women was only getting like $100, 300, you know, a month, and that's it. And I was so shocked by that. And I remember thinking, 300 a month, babe, that's not even food, And I just remember thinking, like, boy, and I think it's the same thing if the situation of the roles were reversed. The difference is men wouldn't be able to handle what majority of women do on a daily basis for their children. Like if it was just men raising children, most couldn't deal with it. More than likely, unfortunately, majority of the children I unfortunately will believe would end up being abused. And then you would probably have a small group of them who would try to figure out who's going to actually sit there and deal with children all day. A lot of people aren't ready for this conversation, I feel like, because what it is to actually take time and energy to actually raise children is difficult. That's why I don't have any kids. That's why I didn't want any. That's why I remain child free. Because I remember watching this growing up. I also worked in daycares, y'all. Literally. Met other women. And it's so interesting when I meet other women who have children. I always think to myself, how sad. Because people don't realize men just, most of them don't have the capability of ever doing those things or thinking of those things or putting that first. So because of that, I think you'll always end up having women who hate what it is to be a mother because they never will ever get to experience, some of them, what it is to be a mother in a beautiful way, like the beautiful experience it was supposed to be. Most of the women I see that come online, it's so sad when I hear their stories. The men they dealt with are bums. They're losers. These men just basically abused them, traumatized them, and made them feel horrified. They couldn't even relax at any point in their pregnancy, and majority of them just felt trapped, scared, and alone. And to know that that was a lot of women's experiences, it just made me realize, like, ugh, like, I would never want to be a mom in any capacity. And I think that bothers a lot of people out there in the world, but I wanted to share that with some people. It's just kind of a taboo subject a little bit because, I don't have any kids. I've even had people tell me that I can't talk about children or speak on children because I don't have any, and I disagree. As a person that has worked in child environments and worked in daycare systems, I also went and learned a little bit about child development. I hate to break it to y'all, being good with children is not always about something that you can learn in school. Sometimes it's about a natural essence that you have to be able to deal with kids or be able to nurture them or to be able to even tolerate them. Everybody doesn't have a toleration for children. That's why I don't believe that every woman should be a mother, nor do I believe that every man should be a dad. I believe only the best of the best men should be able to have kids, and a lot of people don't like that. I think only men who want to be fathers and husbands should have children. And this is going to be a very controversial subject because I know it's going to be taboo. So I'll give you an example. Just because a man wants to have a wife And just because a man wants to have a family, it does not mean that in his mind he plans on being a good man to a woman that he proposed to or a good husband. It also doesn't mean that he plans on being a great father to the children that he's having with that woman. It just means that he wants that ideal life more so in a superficial way. But he doesn't necessarily want to participate in all of the rear ending or the well roundedness of what it takes to create and bring up well rounded children. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of time. Another thing I'll tell y'all that I noticed too when I was working in a daycare, the level of women that came in along with their kids was probably one of the most saddest things I think I ever realized. This is also why I don't have any kids and I don't want any. It was so many women that was alone, and it was just them and their child, or them and their multiple children. There was maybe out of the whole daycare, maybe two or three women that either were married or had men who were actively in their child's life. That's it. And that was out of 30 to 40 of kids, 30 to 40 students in just the one class. And I remember thinking like, wow, can you imagine? Only 2 out of 3 fathers showed up out of 40 children. And mind y'all, actively present in the child's life. And because, I kind of sat back and paid attention to this and watched it enough, I remember thinking that when we first started having that child-free conversation, how strange it was watching so many people feel some type of way about people being child-free and being excited about it. And people thought that was insane. I don't understand why. Any woman that I ever met that wanted to be a mother, if that's what they wanted, I was happy for them. But I never tried to force what I want to do for my life on other people. However, seeing is that we're in the current economic times, a lot of people don't understand, I think, too, how scary that is. Not just that the level of women I'm telling y'all I've watched and seen go through not only their pregnancies alone, men abandon them in pregnancies. I'll even tell y'all one time I was at the hospital, I'll never get this one lady, she was having a baby, her husband, we're going to say that, okay, because, no shade, but I'm learning that husband has a definition per person. Some people husbands is nothing I would ever consider a husband. Some people man ain't nothing I would ever consider a man. So I always say things nowadays in quotes because I'm like, baby, that ain't no man. And it's not to throw shade at people, but I've met a lot of people enough to realize like they're dealing with a lot of cowards, okay? And she was crying and eccentric, things like, typical things, very excited about her baby. And I never forget this. I looked this man right in his face. He literally told his woman, that I'll be back. I'm finna go get you some food, what you want to eat. And she's like, okay. That man never came back to the hospital. He abandoned that woman and that baby in the hospital. I will never forget that. I knew then, nope. And mind you, she sat there and waited and waited. She's like, oh, something must be wrong. Something must be wrong. It must be this. I remember coming back to work the next day being like, I'm going to make sure I check on this woman. That man abandoned her in the hospital with her baby. And she said he was there the whole time, the whole 9 months, the whole this. Seeing that just proves that what I thought was true. Most people was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I even remember all the other nurses looking at him and thinking like, no, he probably something happened. He might have gotten to a wreck. And they're all like, oh my God, we got to find out what happened to him. And I'm the only person that's looking at them. I didn't say anything, but the first thing I thought into my head was he abandoned this woman. I didn't say it out loud, though, because I know when you see patterns of certain things, y'all, and you say it, it makes people uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And I will never forget the look on her face when they finally found out that, yes, he really did just leave her. They even sent her family members to her house or something like that to look. He was gone. And I was like, yup. And I just shook my head. But I wanted to bring this up, y'all. Just because it was something that was on my mind that I really believe is honestly true. Most women would never even have an issue with having children had they had enough financial support, community support, breaks from being able to spend time away from their children as well as spending time for themselves. And of course, if they had a present, active man who was willing to be a good father in their life, no woman would have an issue with having a child. But the climate that we're living in, I'm telling y'all, some days, every day, I'm shocked that people are continuing to have babies. Like, the birth rate is down. I think, thank God. Whew. I mean, who else needs to bring a child into this insufferable situation that, unfortunately, the climate that we're in. But that's all. I just wanted to tell y'all my opinion on this little taboo subject and just some of the stuff I kind of seen and watched. And I wanted to know about other people who are also child free, other people who don't have kids either. What do y'all think about this situation? What do you think about some of the men and women you've met in your life as well who have kids? You know? What do you think about this? Until the next one.